Yeah. Macallan and friends, come vibe with us. Real talk, no lies. One fam, that's right. Macallan and friends, come vibe with us. Real talk, no lies. One fam, that's right. Macallan and friends, come vibe with us.
All right, man. Welcome everybody to season finale of Macallan Friends, man. Super excited to have all of y'all here. So for those of y'all who've been tuning in, man, we spoke about a lot of topics across the board, man, from social justice issues, political stuff, things in our culture. But the vision behind that's not for us to stay behind the camera or behind the audio, just talking about season one, but we want to get deeper into topics by inviting more people into the conversation. So that's one, man. I'm super excited to have y'all here. So yeah, we're just opening the conversation now to involve y'all to really do a debrief of season one and get some outside perspective, be challenged, and really go into different point of views, man. So I'm gonna just go around really quick, just introduce everybody. And then we're just gonna kick it off, man. I'm just gonna open the floor up to see where it takes us, some of the things that y'all thought about season one, and we're ready to take the heat, man, really. So to my left right here, I got my man Isaac. So thank you for coming, man. I'm just gonna say the name, not too much in detail. Next to Isaac, I got my man Celis right here. Thank you for coming out, man. Next to Celis, I got my boy Leroy. To my left, that's my right hand, my partner right here, man, that we've been just laboring and putting in work in this podcast. I'm Lewis. This is Kim right here. Thank you, Kim, for coming. I got my man Ruben here, and of course Natalie. So yeah, man. So let's kick it off, man. So the first thing, really, to get right into it is, I just want to open the floor up. And again, it doesn't have to be no set order, but just open the floor up to have y'all talk a bit about things throughout the season that stood out to y'all, right? Whether it be things you disagree with, things you agreed with, and just get into that conversation as far as season one as a whole, and kind of just sharing your thoughts, right? So I'll start with that. Anyone on any side could kick us off, man, and we could get to it.
Yeah, let me start it off real quick.
All right, Ruben, talk to us.
In terms of, well, first I want to congratulate you guys, just because what you guys have done. One, it takes courage to start something, right? As somebody who has tried to start a blog post or a website and has failed twice, I know that it takes diligence, it takes consistency, and whether we agree with your views or not, their work ethic is something I definitely agree with. So I want to congratulate both of you.
Dope,
and listening to you guys has been dope. You guys give me something to listen to on the train, other than Home is Crazy. In terms of the podcast itself, I've enjoyed it. There's been a few things that I deeply agree with, some things I just genuinely disagree with, and hopefully we can get into that as the conversation goes in. For sure. I got the clips loaded. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it and to get into it.
So on that same note, man, what is something that you feel like, as far as that you agreed with, and something that you like, man, I just don't agree with that, man?
Yeah. So the one thing I agreed with was the episode on college. I think that's when you were interviewing Michael Hamlet. And with that one, I'm not too sure if I can speak for everyone in the room, but for me, I was just there nodding the entire time, like, yes, it's very overvalued, at least financially or economically. And I also believe that it's something that hasn't really been developed or advanced in the past, like just like Mike said, in the past 100 or 200 years.
The college degree.
Yeah, the college degree, because technology should, like the way technology is, the technology we have today, we should be, doing school completely differently, right? There's way too many advancements in terms of, the speed of internet, the speed of information, the fact that I can watch a video live stream from Facebook in high quality, and I have to go to a brick and mortar school to learn. I think
Mm-hmm.
you know there's been a slowing down of advancement in the educational process, and I think that's due to the fact that people want money,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the allure of the college degree, that there's no price on that. And I think that lie that there's no price on your education means that literally anybody can put any price, and that it'll run someone
Yeah.
their whole pockets out. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good start there, because when I think of that episode, I think something provoking we said is that school brainwashes people, and I feel like, I know people have thoughts on that, and certain thoughts we said and how that came off, but I don't know if anybody had any other thoughts on that. But as far as school and I just overall college, not school, but I guess college more specifically.
So when we're talking brainwashing, do you mean as far as a routine of being able to get up, go to your classes, handle your responsibilities, set a schedule, and follow that? Or are you saying brainwash as far as I need to do this to get somewhere, and I have to be this type of person, I have to follow these procedures to get there? What do you mean by brainwash?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because so someone like the social concepts in school, I feel like are definitely brainwashing into like the millennials. So for example, like remember we spoke about a social construct, about how like gender is a social construct and race is a social construct, and what college is now teaching these students is that there's no such thing as like male or female. That's a social construct, and that race is a social construct. So there's no such thing as being, black, white, Asian, or anything. And that's I mean that's kind of where I come from in the brainwashing. Where it's like, how are you telling people there's no such thing as male or female? So.
Yeah, and I guess go on that same breath, Leroy. I think it's not only I think you can learn great things in school, but I do think school as a whole has taken this picture of indoctrinating kind of students in a certain way, and this goes back to, I would say, free thinking, right? So when I say brainwashing, I feel like it prevents college students and people from really thinking on their own. So not that it's bad. I feel you can learn something great in school, and some people I think should go to school. But I think overall it strips you some freedom of like who you are, what you should believe, and how you should think,
Well, I disagree with that, because as you guys mentioned in your podcast, there are upwards of 300 majors or whatever, as many as you can do. So that gives you the free reign of thinking. Then you can plan your schedule however you want, so that you're doing it to how you operate.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm getting at as far as like brainwashing. Are we talking in our classes what the teachers are giving you? Are we saying as far as when you go to college, you're becoming this robot?
I mean, I feel like, I guess I'll ask you a question. Like, do you feel like school teaches you how to learn, or does it teach you what to learn? And I feel like it more so teaches you what to learn than actually how to learn. And what you have is like, you have college students, when they graduate, they don't really go into like reading or researching, like they stop all of that. So that's proof that it really doesn't teach you how to learn. It kind of just teaches you do these things. It's like a training, and I guess that's kind of where the brainwashing comes from. I mean, would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, and I would say that's what I mean, the freedom of thinking on your own. So it's not to say that all those majors, Leroy, because I agree with what you're saying. I think with all the majors, there's pros and cons, right? With all those majors, there's options to pick something that's like, okay, this is something like I think I might be interested in. But at the same time, with all the majors, it's kind of trapping you in just choosing one certain kind of major to kind of think a certain way and do that. And I think the way it goes back to really like them. When I say them, I'm saying it's school, and I can't say all schools, but teaching you what you need to learn. You know what I'm saying? Rather than like giving you that freedom to think freely, And I think that goes back also really quick to our last episode, where we spoke a lot about the culture in college campuses, So I think this is where we're coming from, to be honest. So although I see what you're saying, I think this goes back to our culture in college campuses, where they're I feel like pushing a certain agenda for their students to think a certain way, right? Which, going back to what Eric said a little earlier, gender neutrality, how gender, they say something like sex is biological, gender is a social construct, and then 56 genders on Facebook. And then these are all things, I won't say every college, but a lot of colleges with their point of views push, right? So I feel like it's teaching you stuff, but it's stripping away like a sense of morality and responsibility, you know?
Yeah.
All right, I can agree with that. So we're talking as far as brainwashing on the educational standpoint, not as far as you growing socially and finding out who you are, because that's how some people find out who they are. I mean,
For sure.
I wouldn't say you have to go into hundreds of thousands of debt to find who you are, but that's how some people find out who they are. And I think finding out who you are is having that ability to be free. Now, as far as the education that you're getting, yeah, it's 100% it's filtered, and you're being taught this and you're thinking that. But as far as how you do it, you still have that choice. And I think that with any profession, if you become a basketball player, you will be brainwashed to operate as a basketball player. If you become an actor, you will be brainwashed on how to become an actor. And that's with school or without. Any profession, you have to become that. Is where I'm trying to get.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I say something?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
I really do think it's because I had a different experience. Like I had a lot of professors that actually had me think outside of the box.
Okay.
So I was learning things in college where, and it was building relationships with my professors as well. But I was learning things that we were not like reading off of a book or not reading off of a textbook. We really were just having like conversations in class about what we thought. And I thought that was excellent. And I know that that's not everybody's experience in college, but I do think that there are still like those opportunities in those kind of environments, like a university environment.
For people to
Yeah.
freely learn and think for their own.
Yeah, I guess there is flexibility there. I guess that's what they're both alluding to. There's definitely flexibility there to what path you want to go. It's not just this one straight path. So I do see that.
Yeah, I think to leapfrog on what Natalie said, I grew up in a very religious rights
Wait, you
home.
just said to leapfrog, right?
Yeah, leapfrog.
All right. Nah, it was just that smooth. That was
To,
smooth.
alley oop what she got, I'm gonna dunk that joint. But I grew up in a very strict religious home. And even though I'm a Christian now, a lot of the things that I learned in school were taboo in my home, right? In terms of different types of philosophies, different types of worldviews. And if I'm not exposed to that, I think that you'll have the exact same type of brainwashing you're afraid of in school. It's happening in many people's homes where people are already in their bubble, where they're not learning about what, what's a social construct, right? They don't know the different types of genders. Even if they disagree, at least give them the chance to disagree, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's where I might lean towards disagreeing with you, where again, I understand where the fear of being in a bubble comes from, because I think that's wrong. And I do believe that in many college campuses you have sort of like a monopoly of ideas by people that tend to lean left, right? Politically, right? Or socially, whatever you want to call it. And even though I don't think that that's putting a gun to people's heads and saying, believe this or die, even though I'm pretty sure in some cases that I've seen, it's similar to that. I do believe that those people who, like myself, or like many others who will go to an institution, like a CUNY institution that's very left too, and they'll listen to people completely and utterly challenge their religious beliefs or the conservative beliefs or liberal beliefs or anything like that. And it's a good thing. I think that, maybe what you mean, and you guys can clarify this for me, maybe what you guys mean is that it's wrong to not have a diversity of ideas. So we shouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I can see where you're coming from. And if the issue is the diversity of ideas, then I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I think it's good you mentioned, because this is going to be the heart of a lot of what we're going to speak about when it comes to ideas. And it's definitely has to do with diversity of ideas, right? So I feel like you mentioning the left, right, and different stances, I feel like they take their stands as the stands you have to stand on, and you're considered kind of like a free thinker only if you think their way, right? Or you're considered wise only if you believe. But the funny thing about that is you're not allowed to question that, right? Which is why we spoke in our last episode about like what college campuses have now, which I think is a big oppression of speech.
Which is that's the same as kind of like you said, like holding a gun to someone's head. What he just said is the same as holding a gun, where you're only a free thinker, you're only in the circle if you think like them. But the minute you think out, you're a sexist, you're a racist, and you're all these things. That is kind of like having a gun to somebody's head.
Definitely,
so I do see that.
Yeah, man.
But I want to hear from Isaac. So
yeah, he just took the mic too.
He had just picked up the mic too. It's just
on that topic, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I guess some of the things that I'm picking up, some of the things that people are talking about, a lot of it, in my opinion, from a Christian parent. Might be the only parent in here, but from a Christian parent
for now, all right,
yes,
for now.
You're close there.
You close.
A lot of the stuff we're talking about really goes back to how people parenting and taking responsibility as a parent, to make sure they're know how to be on schedule and how to study, how to do that kind of stuff. If you get to 18 and you're not at that point already, you got other issues. If you have to go to college to learn how to get on a schedule, there's a lot of other things that haven't been taught to you in the first 18 years of your life.
That were even more important.
So stuff like that. And then go back to Ruben's. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you this question on that, right? Because a lot plays in parenting, right? Would you want to put, let's say, because I feel like this is something we spoke about in our podcast, in our culture, who's raising the next generation, right? This is something we spoke about. So I think the challenge is you want to be this good parent, but now we have the mom and the dad both working, right? And then who's educating your children, right? I think who's educating your children, a big part of it is schools. And then what are schools teaching? Which is why we're making this stance. And then in that, like, I think Eric made this statement in one of the podcast episodes. Like, I do not want to send, although I don't have children, but I'd love to hear your point of view. I don't want to send my children to a school where they refuse to call them male or female. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I think that right there is like, man, that's hard.
That's sick. Is what
you know what I'm saying? That's kind of sick, to be honest. That's the stance we're taking. We feel that's sick because you're disrupting a design, you're disrupting responsibility, and that's the recipe for disruption in a country. You know what I'm saying? An economy, But
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's a bigger issue at the lower education levels than it really is at the college, because as a parent, you want to do a good job of opening up their thought process during that whole phase and their understanding of what's out there, what's going on in the different ideologies and philosophies that are out there, to where by the time they're 18, they could go to college and not get corrupted or whatever people want to call it, to change their views without being able to stand up with what they believe and stand toe to toe if they need to. So I think a lot of that at the lower levels or younger kids, that's really where you need to focus more of the attention on, because that's when you're a lot more impressionable. And that's where I think a lot more of the real brainwashing is happening, because a 6, 8, 10-year-old that's going to school all day, doesn't see their parents all day, and then maybe sees them for a couple hours at night. There's not a whole lot of changing or talking through some of the things that they've learned every day. And then that's where all of those ideologies and philosophies start taking root, in my opinion.
No, for sure. So I think now we took a leap from college education to kind of just education as a whole in our system, in our country, kind of thing, rather than just college, right? Because I think that's one of the episodes we spoke about. But I think the heart of a lot of what we spoke about is the different influences, like social media was one of our episodes, and the influence that had, which I think that's a form of education a little bit. And then you took it back to parenting, and then what we're challenging is the parent as involved as it thinks it is, depending, they could be, but it's just, I think that's.
Yeah, in 2017, it's a challenge to be a parent and involved the way that you want to be. And that I'm sure most parents want to be more involved or feel like they want to be more involved in their kids' lives, but it's challenging. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of distractions, but it's a challenge.
And my thing is, during that distraction, who's raising your kid? Like, that's kind of what we spoke about, like that in-between time where it's after school and, you're working, whatever the case is, and your kid is watching television or on social media. That's who's raising your child. And that's kind of where they're building their ideas. That's where they're getting their perception of the world that they live in, and you're telling boys that they're not boys. You're telling girls they're not girls. They can choose. It's kind of confusing, Imagine us growing up being told that we weren't boys and, we could and should wear a dress or whatever the case is, like that. That can lead to, and again, is at that age they're so impressionable, so. But
I would say that's just I guess that's the byproduct of you choose who you leave your children with. You choose that.
Do you?
You do, and here's why. There are programs right now by the government,
You're
and
leaving them with the government.
say,
You're leaving them with the government.
but there are programs by the government that allow you to go to things like charter schools, and there's if you're a parent, and even here in the city, there are a few schools right now that are charter schools that are kind of private, or there's private schools, and there's grants and there's tuitions for these children that you can leave your kids in an environment that you choose, that you think is best for your children. Personally, I kind of want my
So I think the difference is in our culture now, we have a lot of different movements, different people with high influence now, pushing us to think a certain way. I think before, yes, you can find glimpses of like them educating kids wrongly, but now it's more of this is the right way, and if you think differently than this, then you're the crazy one. So kind of devalues even like, at least it attempts to do that, the education of the parent and them being at home, right? So what I say to that is, I think it is a little different in our culture now because of how things have escalated and the different levels of people with influence talking about these things, not only as an option, but as the only option, right? So that's kind of scary when everywhere you look, you're kind of trying to be that. Like, so I feel like what we have to do is fight for that. And because I feel like the thing is, what you said, what can we do, right? And I feel like we can't say, it is what it is, we got to just do it, which I don't think that's what you're saying fully, but I think we have to find a way to literally fight back, I feel, right? I feel like our generation, the war is fought with our words now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like with your voice, right? I don't know, it was something.
Yeah, no, I feel like, I guess I kind of, the challenge is the fact that you got to find a place where you can trust to leave them. Where we once lived in a time where you can leave them with your spouse because they were there. Now you got to trust a third party to come in. And that's usually not going to be good. You know, I guess that's kind of where the challenge is at.
I mean, even going back 50, 60 years, you still had to trust the local education system and the teachers involved there because they were still going, even at that point, even if the wife was staying at home, the kids were still going off to school.
But for those first 4 or 5 years, the wife was there versus now the nanny's there putting them on the television.
Yeah. And I think going back to Ruben's thing, I definitely think that from a Christian perspective, you can raise children in a public school and them turn out to still be in the faith. I think it takes a whole lot more intentionality on a daily basis that people don't necessarily realize. I mean, I have a lot of friends who their kids have gone through public schools and turned out great, but they were very intentional about making sure they understood what their kids were being taught every day and talked through it from a Christian perspective. And make sure that they understood their beliefs and their values of what they were wanting their kids to be instilled in their kids, and not just accepting whatever happened at school that day.
Every academic award I got, I earned. It wasn't because we were part of a team. It's either you won it or you didn't. And it builds character. Yeah, it hurt at times when I didn't win, first place in the science fair because I put a lot of thought and work into it. But it just made me be better for next time. But these participation stuff, it really needs to stop. It's not building character.
Yeah.
Too sensitive.
That's what's dangerous about that is now you go to the real world where you have to work for promotion. You have to work to prove yourself. You have to work even going to like a relationship. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I think it builds a sense of entitlement in our culture where everything we do, we should kind of accept this. I'm like, no, we shouldn't. We could challenge that. Doesn't mean I hate the person, which goes back to the heart of a lot we spoke about, like what you both mentioned right now. And I think participation trophy is one that gets me always because I'm like, really? Like, what? Participation trophy? Like, what happened to first, second, third, and no trophy?
Yeah, that's
a lot
to
be honest. Like, you didn't get a trophy, then you know what that pushes you to do? That pushes you to work harder, right? Work on your craft and go out and try again next year.
I mean, I guess ultimately I feel like everybody here made great points. It's not impossible to ultimately, raise your kid the way you want them to. It's just that it's a challenge, and what's bringing on that challenge, in my opinion, I guess most of us could agree, is the system. Right, the system is what's bringing on that challenge. It is possible. It's going to take extra work. You're not home half the time. What's on TV, what's on social media, what the school is teaching is all, maybe against what you believe. So it is a challenge. But just to move a little bit from this topic, I kind of want to get, like from Salas, just like what didn't you agree with? I guess like more of a negative topic. What didn't you agree with?
So I enjoyed a good number of the podcast. Every now and then you guys would say some things. And I don't know, sometimes maybe I wasn't completely understanding. So me personally, I remember listening to the role models conversation, and I remember hearing, so I don't know if it was the phrasing and with what we just kind of came off of about not wanting to offend anyone, but I felt like it's easy for us who may not understand the full pressures of the person in certain roles to easily kind of look down that they're not valuable because we don't agree with what they do. Ooh. So I remember one particular comment, not like I'm just like crazy defending Oprah or like Kim Kardashian, but I remember you guys spoke in the vein of, we've got people looking up to these women and, you know, they have money and esteem. Specifically, you said something about Kim K and you were like, she doesn't do anything.
No, I said you could put her on the stage and she can't do nothing for you. Right?
Yeah. And not like I want to stand up and
I mean, she can do some stuff for you. It's just you can't sell that to teens. That's
she
what I'm
brings
saying.
nothing of value. Is what we were really trying to say.
And as much as I can't sit here and necessarily tell you a long list of things, I still don't feel in agreement with us saying that no one can give you anything of value. Just me personally, that statement bothers me.
Yeah.
So hearing you guys say that, no matter what you said afterward to cover it up, I already was like, I don't like that. There were some things you guys said. We talked about, one of the things we talked about, the phrase Black Lives Matter, which we know that there have been counter phrases that have come as a result of that phrase, All Lives Matter. From the way I took it, I think that it came off to me that you guys were saying that phrase as a microaggressive term. And I feel like it is offensive. I feel like the statement all lives matter is offensive. Not because all lives don't matter, but I think when you say it in the vein of people whose lives historically have never mattered as a counter to an assertion of the fact Black lives have never mattered in this country. And the fact that when we say that now there's a feeling like we have to say all lives matter. We've never said all lives don't matter by saying Black lives matter. So when you guys said that, it rubbed me the wrong way because I'm a person who has boldly proclaimed Black lives matter. And it's never been in an effort to mean that other lives don't matter, but it's only been historically Black lives have never mattered in this country. So as I proclaim that is never a downgrade of any other life. There was that. And I don't want to sound like I'm
let's
just
get it.
I don't want to sound like I'm just going in.
No, please.
I don't want to sound like I'm just
Continue,
going
continue.
in. Social media. I do for the most part do believe that social media has in the similar vein of like the school systems now, social media has become that other parent that has been brainwashing us, making us think our value is only by how many likes and also pushing us to be political correct and not offend anyone. But I do believe in the same way, social media has also given voice to a lot of people who never would have had a voice. And I personally feel like we cannot use the negative ills of social media that are highlighted and say that all social media is a problem. And not that you guys were necessarily saying that, but those were some things that I felt strongly about in listening to the podcast that I just kind of was like,
that's
okay.
good.
All right,
So
let's
So
start.
happy you share all that, man.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
let
great.
you start.
Oh, I guess we could start with what's the first point you made with the Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
let's
Black
start
Lives
with that.
Matter. I get offended when people say all lives matter after Black Lives Matter. We're not saying all lives don't matter. But if I say Black Lives Matter and you respond all lives matter, I feel like that's extremely insensitive to what I'm saying.
I just feel like the statement it causes the division, because I mean all lives always mattered. Although Black lives have been treated like they don't matter, but not just Black lives, many lives have been treated like don't matter. You know, you can speak to Jewish people, they'll tell you that their lives, you know, through history have not mattered. So I get that. I don't believe in microaggressions. I feel like we got to take things into context. You know, like if I say all lives matter, I feel like that shouldn't be something that should be taken as like, I'm necessarily saying like black lives
But here's
matter.
why I say that. And then I just want to clear this up. I say it because it was a response. I don't say it was because it wasn't like all lives matter was this big phrase and then someone said Black Lives Matter. We're not included in that. Black Lives matter.
Okay.
It was
I get you now.
Black
Now I'm with
Lives
you.
Matter. No, all lives matter.
Okay.
And it was like, no,
I
that's
guess
not.
for me personally. I guess I don't know if you want
I'll
to
go after you.
chime in on that, but for me personally, just the movement alone, there's a lack of authenticity to the movement in my opinion, because it came off police brutality, and I feel like if Black Lives Matter, then why aren't we in these urban communities where Black people are killing each other? So at that point, it's like all lives do matter, you know, because the Black Lives Matter, they're just coming at just like the police brutality, and then how many Black lives are being lost to police brutality, and that's what we're gonna stand Black Lives Matter behind. You know, Black Lives Matter. Let's go to the urban community. You know, let's.
Yeah. So I think when I think about Black Lives Matter, it's not because I'm trying to say, hey, you shouldn't have a movement about Black Lives Matter, but when you see what they're pushing in Black Lives Matter, like their main agenda is saying that police officers are killing Black people, right? Although I can't say that has never happened, but when you look at the reality of it, what plagues the Black community and even deeper the minority community, it's not police brutality. That's not the main issue, right? And I know that might sound like, oh man, but you're just gonna dismiss police brutality, but that's their stance, which I feel this is what hurts me, right? When I speak about that, what hurts me is like, man, in you doing that, I feel like it's causing more division between police officers and minorities. And when that's not the heart of the problem, you never want to get to the heart of a problem, right? So you never get into families. We never get into it's really offensive for Black Lives Matter for us to say black on black crime, right? And I wonder why that is too. I'm like, that shouldn't be offensive, to be honest, because that's part of the problem. So I see what you're saying, Celis. If it's only people saying like, yo, all lives matter every time somebody says Black Lives Matter. But I think if people are saying all lives matter because Black Lives Matter is standing on a ground that I feel is shaky right now. You know, that ground of like, if your movement is based on Black Lives Matter because police officers kill Black people, then I feel like it's not legitimate enough for you to run on that, because that's not what's plaguing the minority community. So that hurts me.
Yeah, because white people die more to the hands of police than blacks. So if you're gonna stand behind Black Lives Matter based on police brutality, then white people die more to the hands of cops. So then all lives do matter.
I still don't agree with that, because I've seen many people stand up and say Black Lives Matter in the face of black on black crime as well. It's a statement affirming Black lives. So I don't see how. My problem is when there's a positive statement, and I'll give an example. I'll try to make a concrete example.
Somebody said Jewish lives matter, and then somebody immediately came out and said no, all lives matter. That would be a very offensive thing, right?
Yeah,
because you're coming out, you're saying we're coming out in support of the Jewish people in Germany. They're getting annihilated. There's an issue here. And I'm the only white person here, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But at the same time, I do want to talk about...
Careful, sir.
Yeah, I know. Be careful here. But the police brutality issue, and you spoke a little bit about more white people die at the hands of police, and that might be true. I don't know the statistics. I think the bigger issue is police brutality in general that we have in this country, and the police authoritarian type state that we have and that we've given to our police. So I think that's a bigger issue, and that's from
that's a bigger issue for Black lives or in America in general?
No, that's what, and from a minority perspective.
Okay.
Again, I don't have that perspective, but I've read and talking to people, that's probably what the biggest thing that y'all see, because that's what y'all deal with on a daily basis, and so that's what you latch on to, and you feel like it's only happening to you, but in reality, it is happening to white people. It's just in a different context, and from the history and the historical perspective of how you've been treated in the past, it's a bigger, weightier issue than it is necessarily for white people. But,
I think I got two thoughts. First one, it seems like we have to separate something real quick. We need to start with the first thing that Celis was talking about, which is just saying Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, that was gonna be
right, because that's different than the movement. Like I myself,
That's what
I
was gonna say.
believe in saying Black Lives Matter because I believe that means something.
Yeah.
I might not agree with everything that the movement stands for. And I think that
That's a good point, really quick, because
go ahead.
what I was gonna say on that is the phrase in itself is not that I'm mad at, right? I'm not mad at the phrase. I think Black lives should matter, right? But the reason, the reason the other counter argument comes is the heart behind what they stand for, and people feel, and I feel personally, that it's other things behind that movement that you should be fighting for, other than just police brutality.
absolutely,
But yeah,
and you can. I think it was Dave Chappelle that actually said this, where they were like, you know, when 50 years ago does not exist. The oppression that they had 150 years ago does not exist. There isn't legitimate slavery. People aren't whipping black people on the back. But the issue is that the ripple effects of those things still matter.
Oh yes, for sure.
And
Oh,
but that's
yeah.
what people are saying. When they say, "Hey, Black Lives Matter," is what they're saying is, man, the ripple effects of the issues from the past, they are still hurting us today, even if it's just by social issues. There might not be like laws, like a Jim Crow law that's created to keep the black man down like there used to be. But there are social stigmas, and you can say social media plays into it. You can say that even black culture to an extent plays into it, but you can't deny the fact that in American culture, there isn't like this in the subconscious, this idea of the black voice not being as important, and not because they're trying, but because it just wasn't as important now. It's still growing. So when people are still trying to reach that, right, you can't get mad at them and saying, "Oh, you're equal." They're trying to get to that. They're trying to get to that same platform. Again, we can argue whether they have that platform right now or not. I think that they do, and they're using it, right?
Yeah.
So that's my
that's really good, because again, when I'm thinking of Black Lives Matter, I'm not thinking about the phrase. I'm thinking more of the movement and what they stand
right.
for.
And again, I'm not. There's a lot of things in the Black Lives Matter movement I do not agree with.
Yeah. So again, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, like we did in different episodes of our podcast, we're talking about different movements, right? So the movement in itself is what we're talking about, because one, you look at a lot of their riots. I was gonna say some, but a lot of their riots, it's not like these peaceful riots. I feel like it's riots that are telling minorities to say the evil man is the police officer, even greater the white man, right? So I feel like in that, fight for black lives, but the way you're doing, I think, needs to be challenged. So we can't just say, no, Black Lives Matter, be aware. We also have to say, how are they fighting for it? So I think the way they're fighting for it is causing more division, where it's saying like, okay, because we're black, we need to look at these people like this. We deserve this. We have this. And I'm like, no, I understand, because the nature of this country, the white man had a head start, you can say, right? So it's time because of what happened. And of course they got to catch up. But I don't think the solution is, you know what? Let's get this paid back, right? Let's do these riots. Black Lives Matter has they had a riot where they were burning down black businesses. Like, what's the point of this? You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not highlighting because of that the whole movement, but this is not isolated situations. So I feel like when I look at the movement is overall what they've been fighting for, I feel like it's hard for me to see that it's really black lives.
Yeah, no, the thing is like, I get where Silas is coming from 100%, where it's like the statement in itself, Black Lives Matter, when you do say all lives matter after it does kind of like bring it down. It does. It does. It definitely does.
If you're not thinking about the movement,
it's a shutdown.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem. I feel like where we were coming from was definitely not the statement alone, was the movement. And nobody was saying Black Lives Matter before the movement. So I feel like if you take the statement, you own the movement. Like we're against the movement, we're with the statement. That's kind of where we're at, because if it wasn't for those, those killings, those cop killings caught on camera, and we just had those black on black crimes in these urban communities like Chicago and Baltimore, would we say Black Lives Matter? Probably not. But black lives always have mattered, but they only matter if the cop kills the black man, according to the movement. And that's what we're on.
Not according to the statement, but according to what they fight for.
Exactly.
And these are signs they have up, and these are things they're fighting for, which is the argument that we're making. Exactly. So it goes more into that, which goes more into the division that we feel is causing.
So yeah, we're definitely with the statement, Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. But do Black Lives Matter only because of police brutality? Because that's what the movement came from. That's what they rally. They rally killing pigs, killing oink, like this is the kind of stuff they're saying. So, I don't feel bad for saying all lives matter to that movement, to just that.
If we're
not
having
to
a
the
conversation
statement.
and you tell me Black Lives Matter, I'm never gonna be like,
No,
what you talking about, bro? All lives matter.
exactly.
That's ridiculous.
Exactly,
Or anyone, I'm gonna be like, all right.
But as far as
that's
police
ridiculous.
brutality, no, like, the main issue wasn't
Yeah,
that.
my statement was more so that, I still would say that the statement I think is very insensitive. But it's because I believe the statement. Like I said, I've always looked at it as the words that I'm saying. That's what I believe. So when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm not associating with a movement. I'm associating with that phrase that I've spoken and that I've said.
For sure.
And so if we even change those words, it's like someone saying, don't kill Black people. And then someone repeating after that and saying, well, don't kill anyone.
Yeah, I got that. But
No, no,
my
yeah, for
argument
sure.
is
It's like,
no one was saying Black Lives Matter when it was just black on black crime. No one was saying that. Did Black Lives not matter then? Because that's the argument I have for people. Like, did Black Lives Matter just started to matter when cops started killing blacks? But when you have all these teenagers killing each other, they don't matter? My
So it's
argument is
like-
that they always have mattered.
like I saw with the recent we just had the recent white nationalist supremacy movement happen in
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville,
Virginia.
Virginia.
For sure.
And there was footage that I saw just yesterday of white protesters pushing up against police, pushing police out the way, and the police were not responding in harsh ways, not trampling them, not fighting back at all. And there were people yelling, not even Black people, there were white people yelling, this is crazy, because when Black people did this same thing, they were cuffed, they were beat, they were pushed down, and this is within recent years. So so when I speak about it, I'm talking about the clear things that we see that show over and over again that Black lives don't matter. So when I'd say it to the statement, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I'm gonna mention this too. There are some, like, when Trump got elected, and they had a movement where, not a movement but a riot, the Black Lives Matter. The cops were told to not retaliate against the movements of Black Lives Matter, stuff like that, because it's
Freedom of speech.
It's their freedom of speech, stuff like that. So I would say those riots get crazy, but a lot of times, because as president, I think Obama was still president because he hasn't got inaugurated. So the command that Obama made was the cops there should not lay a hand or even react to what's happening, right? They just have a duty to just stand there. So I would say that even happens in other movements, right? Not only Black Lives Matter, I feel like now I'm kind of thinking of all types of movements, which are the heart of our podcast. A lot of things we're talking about, it's not only like an isolated different movements, but even movements in general, where I feel like they're just pushing these agendas, right? But I gave that example to say, like, that's happened also in Black Lives Matter movement, where the cops are told to not move, because remember, the biggest things that happen in those riots, it's actually the opposite. It's the people rioting doing more damaging, but they're fighting because the cops, or mostly the cops, somebody died or something happened. But in the riots, that's usually not the case. The riots is usually the opposite, where the cops are being like trampled, or the cops got to bring more people in, but then, things like that. But in that same breath, I feel like the big thing that we're speaking about in our podcast is different movements, which is kind of suppressing freedom of really speaking if you're not with a movement. Like, movements are just kind of like the wave now, I feel. Like, these movements start, and you got to be aligned with these views in order to kind of, I guess one of the terms they use, in order to be woke,
Yeah, it's like you're racist if you don't believe in it, and it's like, of course, we Black Lives Matter. Of course, and I like I said, I mean, we definitely do agree with the statement. It's just the movement. I don't believe, like, I'm not gonna stand for, like, cops should die, we should shoot them back. Like, that doesn't create a healthy society.
For sure, yeah.
And that's what they stand for. And again, and I always stick, the statement came from them. You know, so it's like we own the statement, we're owning the movement. And what is owning that movement? You know, you have cops protecting the freedom of speech. It's the cops that protect freedom of speech. And you have protests, you have cops that are just making sure that nobody gets hurt or whatever. And I mean, of course, things always go bad. But while they're doing that, you're hearing, you know, kill pigs while they're protecting you. That's wrong.
And I would still just say that that's not all the whole movement. You know,
That's
that's
the
not
heart of the movement,
everybody.
for sure.
And I would say I would question even if it's as a whole the heart of it. Even though I agree that I've been in some spaces where I'm like, that's not the answer. That's not what this is for. But in those spaces, I've also seen positive Black Lives Matter movements that are strictly just to affirm Black lives because they haven't been.
I have a question for you guys.
Yep.
So again, in light of what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, you had what was called the Unite the Right movement.
Yep.
Right? Where you had white supremacists who were chanting White Lives Matter.
Yep.
And again, we're standing with Donald Trump. So my question is, if the chanting of, you know, kill pigs and all that stuff, if that is at the core of Black Lives Matter, so would you say that with the rights and the Donald Trump movement and, you know, conservatives and all that stuff, would this new White Lives Matter, white supremacist thing, is that the core of the right? Because it seems like that's the logic there. Like, pick the most negative thing from either movement, and that's your core. Because if that's the case, then as conservatives, the alt-right is who you are, and that's all you stand for, and that's it.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like the media didn't do a great job at like covering the heart of that whole Unite the Right thing. Because like the whole Unite the Right thing came from like they were taking down some statues down there. The Robert E. Lee, was it?
Yeah, the Confederate statues of the guys who, you know, were treasonous.
And obviously what that does, I disagree with taking it down in general, because what that does is that it does create that hostility where it does bring people from the far right who we don't agree, people from the far right, you know, who are way out there, who are racist. Of course not, but you know, it's same to say that's those from the far left.
You wouldn't agree with taking down the statue?
No.
Why not?
Because it creates this. It creates that kind of, you know. So why take it down?
The Berlin Wall, I'm pretty sure created tension, but you had to take that down, no?
You're gonna compare a Robert E. Lee statue to a wall?
Absolutely.
How so?
Because Robert E. Lee was a traitor to the country who wanted to keep slavery.
We have statues up to date of people that were slave owners.
I agree, but there's a difference between, hey, you know, this is a slave owner and this is a treasonous figure of history. And you're what? And then on top of that, you're gonna have the Confederate flag, which again was the flag that was against. I'm not even going from the perspective of like black and white people. I'm just going from the perspective of government. History, right? In Germany, they're not flying the Nazi flag because of history. Right. They took that down. Why is it that we still have these statues up? Right? When I think it was Saddam Hussein or dictators in the Middle East, their reigns are ended. They take down those statues. Why is it that here in the South we're not taking down these statues? And I'm for keeping the historical things. Like, take it down, put it in a museum. That's fine. But why not take it down from the public display? Because again, it's a public display. Yeah. Why not take it down?
I feel like, well, for example, I remember the Democratic Party, they voted against abolishing slavery. You can look that up. We still have them. Actually, most blacks vote for them. Should we take down that party? Because they actually voted against all kind of, you know, equal rights for blacks. Right. What do we do about that party?
I mean, the party itself is fluid and that can move, and that's people. We're talking about a statue that's there for historical purpose to represent history. Again, you got the Mount Rushmore, you got the White House, you have the statues and the historical monuments that are there to represent America. That literally does not represent America because it didn't want to be part of America.
Robert E. Lee?
Yeah. So why have it there? I think that's the pushback that everyone is giving to that. And that's
Finish.
Even like I understand the pride part of it, as because I've heard someone from the South say, you know, it's a pride thing. It's about our heritage, right? I can understand that. But the heritage that we're talking about is the heritage of the United States. And there was a civil war and they lost. And when you lose in a civil war, all the the stuff, the flags, the representation of that other side, of the rebellious side, is gone. In almost any other country, it would be gone. It would be put away in either in history, in a museum, or burnt. Right? I'm not advocating to burn it down and erase it from memory, because I think that that'll end up with us repeating it, right? And repeating the racism, repeating the slavery, right? That's stupid to me. But it's also foolish to me to leave something there that we like. Again, it's like if we go to the Middle East and they still have Saddam Hussein statues up. If we go to Germany and they still have Hitler statues up. Why are we doing this? We can conserve history in a museum. We can acknowledge our past, again, not in a way that gives honor, because we don't want to give honor to this. We want to remember it, but not honor it.
Yeah, definitely. That's good. I think this is definitely the heart of what we want to do with the vision, inviting people to the conversation, and really having people challenge us and challenge one another in order to open the conversation, man. So thanks for tuning. It's part 1 here, and we'll be back.
Macallan and friends, come vibe with us. Real talk, no lies. One band, that's right. Macallan and friends, come vibe with us. Real talk, no lies. One band, that's right. Macallan and friends, come vibe with us. Real talk, no lies. One band, that's right.